Welcome to Slumber Lore, your safe haven from the endless noise of the modern world. Tonight, we travel back in time to seek shelter behind the massive stone walls of a medieval fortress. Leave your daily worries at the heavy iron gates as we step into a world of quiet halls, ancient lords, and forgotten legends. Find a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Listen to the gentle rain falling against the cold stone, the warm, comforting crackle of the hearth fire. Let the quiet rhythm of castle life guide you into a deep, restful sleep. The world behind the castle walls. Imagine a world where the first light of dawn reached towering stone walls before it touched the quiet villages below. Across the hills and valleys of medieval Europe, castles stood as silent guardians, watching over a landscape shaped by uncertainty, ambition, and the constant hope for safety. Silence could be broken at any moment by the sound of distant hoofbeats, the ringing of a chapel bell, or the warning call of a watchman high above the walls. Every ordinary morning carried the possibility that history itself might arrive before sunset. To some, these castles promised protection. To others, they represented authority and power. And for nearly everyone living nearby, they became mysterious landmarks whose towering walls seemed to separate the familiar world from something far greater. Behind these walls, kings negotiated alliances, nobles debated matters of land and loyalty, and soldiers prepared for conflicts that could reshape entire kingdoms. Every chamber witnessed decisions whose consequences reached far beyond the castle gates. Yet, castles were more than places of war. Families raised children here, servants carried out their daily work, and ordinary lives unfolded beneath roofs that sheltered both joyful celebrations and uncertain futures. Behind every stone wall lived a community with its own hopes and fears. For centuries, castles have immured stories of hidden tunnels, forgotten chambers, and restless spirits set to wander silent corridors. Whether true or imagined, these legends remind us that castles have always existed somewhere between history and folklore. Many tales belong more to local tradition than documented history, yet the stories themselves became part of each castle's identity, passed from one generation to the next, adding mystery to places already shaped by centuries of remarkable events. To understand why castles appeared across Europe, we must first understand the age that created them. After the Western Roman Empire collapsed, political authority became fragmented, and many regions entered a period of profound transformation. Large, centralized governments gave way to regional rulers whose influence often depended as much upon personal loyalty as written law. Across Europe, authority became increasingly local, and every community faced its own uncertain future. Travel was slow, communication even slower, and borders could change with surprising speed. A peaceful valley might become a battlefield within weeks, leaving ordinary people to rely on nearby leaders rather than distant kings for protection. Security was never guaranteed. News often arrived too late, and danger could emerge from beyond the next hill without warning. For many communities, survival depended not upon distant monarchs, but upon the strength and leadership found much closer to home. In such an uncertain world, power needed a visible symbol. Stone offered something timber never could, a lasting impression of strength, permanence, and authority that could be seen from miles across the surrounding countryside. The earliest castles were often simple wooden fortifications, known today as motte and bailey castles. Built quickly upon raised earthworks, they provided immediate protection during an age when speed could mean the difference between safety and disaster. Yet timber had serious weaknesses. Fire could spread rapidly through wooden walls, while years of rain, insects, and decay slowly weakened the structures. Even without an enemy, constant repairs demanded time, labor, and valuable resources. Gradually, rulers across Europe began replacing timber with stone. Thick walls, defensive towers, fortified gates, and deep moats transformed temporary strongholds into enduring fortresses built to protect both people and political power for generations. These castles were far more than military fortresses. They became homes for noble families, centers of government, courts of justice, secure places to store harvests and weapons, and powerful symbols of wealth and authority throughout the surrounding countryside. Building a stone castle demanded extraordinary effort. Thousands of laborers, stonemasons, carpenters, blacksmiths, and craftsmen worked together for years, sometimes decades, to create a fortress capable of standing against both time and war. Every block of stone represented countless hours of patient labor. Every carefully carved corner reflected generations of practical knowledge, passed from experienced master builders to young apprentices through years of observation and practice. Yet, despite their impressive appearance, castles were never truly invincible. History records many mighty fortresses that eventually surrendered, not only to military force, but to hunger, disease, political betrayal, or simple exhaustion. A castle's greatest strength often depended less upon the thickness of its walls than upon the determination of its defenders and the food stored safely inside. In times of siege, endurance could become the most powerful weapon of all. Modern archaeology has revealed details of castle life that written history often overlooked. Beneath the earth's broken pottery, worn tools, animal bones, and everyday objects quietly preserve the lives of ordinary people who once called these walls home. Castles were never inhabited by kings and knights alone. Cooks, servants, scribes, craftsmen, merchants, priests, stable workers, and children all played essential roles in creating thriving communities within the shelter of the stone walls. Historians continue to debate the true purpose of castles. Some believe every architectural choice focused on defense, while others argue these great fortresses also served as carefully designed displays of wealth, prestige, and political authority. Experts agree that no single design defined every medieval castle. Geography, local traditions, available stone, economic resources, and change in military technology all shaped these remarkable fortresses in different ways across Europe. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how these castles were built, but how the people inside experienced them. What hopes filled a child's heart, or what fears accompanied a lonely watchman standing beneath the endless winter sky. Those questions still linger among these ancient ruins. We can measure walls, date foundations, and recover forgotten objects, but the private thoughts and quiet emotions of medieval lives remain beyond the reach of history. As darkness settles across Europe, we begin to understand that every castle was more than a collection of stones. Each one represented a response to uncertainty, a symbol of power, and a refuge for generations who lived within its walls. Behind every tower stood countless human stories. Some were preserved in royal records, while many others disappeared with time. Together, they formed the living heart of every medieval fortress, giving meaning to the stone that still survives today. Yet, one important question still remains. Why did medieval Europe gradually replace simple wooden defenses with the great stone castles that continue to dominate the landscape today? That story begins with ambitious rulers changing kingdoms and a remarkable revolution in the art of building for survival and power. Why Europe began building stone castles. The first castles were never intended to last forever. They answered immediate dangers, offering protection in uncertain times. Yet as Europe slowly changed, these simple wooden fortresses would give way to something far more enduring. Castles built not only for survival, but for generations yet to come. Following the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, Europe became a landscape changing borders and competing rulers. Communities often relied on nearby lords for protection, while distant kingdoms struggled to maintain lasting control over their lands. In those uncertain centuries, speed mattered more than permanence. Timber was abundant, and experienced carpenters could raise defensive walls and towers within weeks, providing communities with immediate protection against sudden attacks. Wood was practical because it could be worked quickly using local materials. Generations of craftsmen understood how to transform forests into strong defensive structures, allowing castles to appear where they were needed most. These early fortifications became known as motte and bailey castles. A wooden keep stood atop a raised mound, while an enclosed courtyard below sheltered workshops, stables, homes, and the everyday life of a growing medieval community. The motte provided height and visibility, allowing defenders to watch the surrounding countryside. Below, the bailey formed a busy enclosed settlement where soldiers, craftsmen, servants, and animals lived and worked behind protective wooden walls. For their time, these castles were remarkably effective. Attackers faced steep slopes, while defenders held the advantage from above, making even modest fortifications difficult to capture through direct assault. Yet, timber carried an unavoidable weakness. Fire could spread rapidly through wooden walls and towers, turning a fortress built for protection into a place of desperate danger within only a short time. Even without war, nature worked patiently against timber. Rain, insects, and decay gradually weakened every beam, forcing rulers to invest constant labor simply to keep their fortifications standing. As political ambitions grew, rulers sought more than temporary defenses. A grey stone castle announced wealth, permanence, and authority, sending a powerful message to allies, rivals, and everyone living beneath its watchful walls. A towering stone castle made a statement long before a single word was spoken. It told travelers who controlled the land, reassured nearby communities, and warned potential enemies that this territory was prepared to defend itself. The change from timber to stone did not happen overnight. Many castles were rebuilt gradually, with wooden walls serving their purpose for years before stronger stone defenses slowly took their place. Building with stone required entirely new skills. Massive blocks first had to be quarried by hand, shaped with remarkable precision, and prepared for a journey that could stretch many miles before reaching the castle site. Transporting stone was often as challenging as cutting it. Heavy wagons crossed rough roads and uneven ground, while entire teams of workers and animals labored together to move each carefully prepared block. Once the stone arrived, the real work began. Human-powered cranes lifted enormous blocks into place as experienced master masons carefully guided every stage of construction, ensuring that the walls would stand for generations. Stone alone could not create a lasting fortress. Builders produced lime mortar by heating limestone in great kilns, then carefully joined each block together. Every layer demanded patience, precision, and remarkable craftsmanship. Some castles took 10 years to complete, others required several decades, with successive generations adding towers, halls, and walls. A great fortress often became the life's work of people who would never see it fully finished. Medieval builders rarely forced nature to fit their plans. Instead, they carefully studied the landscape, using hills, cliffs, rivers, and rocky ground to strengthen a castle's natural defenses before the first stone was ever laid. The surrounding landscape became part of the fortress itself. High cliffs, fast-moving rivers, and steep hills reduced the number of vulnerable approaches, allowing nature to work alongside carefully built stone defenses. Archaeological research shows that many castles occupy strategically important locations. From these commanding positions, rulers could watch trade routes, defend river crossings, control mountain passes, and strengthen their influence across the surrounding countryside. Castles rarely stood alone. As their walls rose higher, villages often grew beside them. Farmers, merchants, blacksmiths, and craftsmen found opportunity under the protection of the fortress, creating communities that flourished alongside it. Markets became places where goods, news, and ideas traveled from one region to another. The castle offered security, encouraging trade that strengthened both the local economy and the authority of the lord who governed the surrounding lands. The castle also served as the center of government. Here, disputes were settled, taxes collected, official records maintained, and important decisions made, reminding everyone that these walls represented authority as much as defense. Historians continue to debate whether castles existed mainly for military defense or as symbols of political prestige. In many cases, both were true. Their strength discouraged attack, while their grandeur reinforced the power of those who ruled within. Every completed castle represented far more than stone and mortar. It embodied years of patient labor, generations of skilled craftsmanship, and the hope that these walls will protect both people and power against an uncertain future. Life inside the medieval fortress. As the great wooden gates slowly closed behind the visitor, the sounds of the outside world began to fade. Beyond these walls lay a different rhythm of life, where every day unfolded beneath the constant protection of stone. The silence outside gave way to the sounds of daily life. The ringing of hammers, the laughter of children, the footsteps of guards, and the steady movement of workers reminded everyone that a castle was a living community. To those who lived within these walls, the castle was far more than a fortress. It was home, workplace, marketplace, government center, and sanctuary, all contained within a carefully organized world of its own. Modern imagination often fills castles with endless luxury. While magnificent feasts certainly took place, everyday life was usually much more practical, and comfort was often sacrificed in favor of strength and security. Every castle functioned as a carefully organized community. Noble families, soldiers, servants, craftsmen, clergy, and children all lived together, each playing a different role in keeping the fortress alive from one sunrise to the next. At the heart of nearly every castle stood the Great Hall. It was here that meals were shared, important visitors received, legal matters discussed, and the daily business of the household quietly unfolded beneath the high timber roof. During festivals and celebrations, the great hall filled with music, conversation, and ceremony. Yet these magnificent feasts were exceptional occasions. Most days followed a quieter rhythm centered on ordinary work and simple meals. Even with large fireplaces burning throughout the day, castles were rarely warm. Thick stone walls protected against attack, but they also held dampness and cold, making long winters especially difficult for everyone living inside. The lord and lady enjoyed private chambers that offered greater comfort than most rooms within the castle. Even so, luxury remained limited, and protection always mattered more than convenience or personal space. Most soldiers and servants shared modest sleeping quarters where privacy was rare. Daily life unfolded side by side, creating a close-knit community whose members depended upon one another through every season of the year. Long before sunrise, the castle kitchens came to life. Fires were lit, bread was baked, and great pots of soup and stew slowly simmered, feeding a household that could include hundreds of people during busy seasons. Castle kitchens were among the busiest places within the fortress. Skilled cooks prepared the meals over open fires, while bakers, brewers, and servants worked together to ensure that food reached every corner of the household. The meals of noble families often included beef, pork, venison, poultry, fresh bread, cheese, fish, and costly spices imported from distant lands. Such ingredients reflected both wealth and the far-reaching trade networks of medieval Europe. For most workers, meals were far simpler. Bread, vegetable pottage, beans, onions, cabbage, and seasonal produce provided the nourishment needed for long days of demanding physical labor inside the castle. Careful storage was essential to castle life. Grain, salted meat, cheese, dry peas, honey, and barrels of ale were preserved for the months ahead, ensuring that the fortress could endure harsh winters or even a prolonged siege. Fresh water was one of the castle's most valuable resources. Many fortresses relied on deep wells or protected springs, allowing daily life to continue and providing an essential lifeline during times of siege. Contrary to popular belief, cleanliness was valued whenever circumstances allowed. Washing hands before meals, changing linen garments, and bathing when possible were familiar parts of life for many castle households. Bathing required effort and preparation. Water had to be carried and heated by hand, making it far less convenient than today. Yet many people still considered personal cleanliness an important part of daily life. Keeping a crowded castle clean presented constant challenges. Many fortresses included guardraobes built into the walls, allowing waste to fall into pits below, a practical solution that reflected the engineering knowledge of the medieval world. The castle chapel formed the spiritual heart of the household. Morning prayers, religious festivals, weddings, baptisms, and funerals all reminded those within the walls that faith shaped nearly every aspect of medieval life. Children brought energy and laughter to the castle. Noble boys began preparing for future military service, while girls learned the skills needed to manage households. Nearby, the children of servants and craftsmen filled the courtyards with ordinary moments of play. The sound of the blacksmith's hammer echoed through the castle almost every day. Weapons, horseshoes, tools, nails, and countless other necessities depended upon skilled craftsmen whose work kept the entire fortress functioning. The castle was rarely quiet. Merchants delivered valuable supplies. Messengers carried news from distant regions. Horses filled the stables, and countless daily tasks unfolded from sunrise until long after sunset. Centuries later, archaeologists continue uncovering traces of everyday castle life. Small discoveries, a child's toy, a broken bowl, or a worn leather shoe offer remarkable glimpses into lives that written history rarely recorded. Behind every stone wall were countless personal stories that history can never fully recover. Yet, as the day fades into night, another question quietly emerges. Who were the powerful men and women responsible for governing these remarkable fortresses? Their story awaits in the next chapter. Lords, ladies, and the rhythm of castle life. As evening candles flickered across the great hall, the castle appeared calm and orderly. Yet beneath this quiet atmosphere, every decision carried responsibility for the land, the people, and the uncertain future beyond the walls. To rule a castle meant far more than enjoying privilege. A lord managed land, collected taxes, settled disputes, prepared defenses, and balanced countless responsibilities that shaped the lives of everyone living under his authority. The lord's responsibilities extended far beyond the castle itself. Village, forests, rivers, and farmland all required careful oversight, while each season brought new challenges involving harvest, trade, justice, and security. Much of medieval society was built upon networks of loyalty and obligation. Kings granted land to powerful nobles, who in turn relied upon lesser lords and knights, creating relationships that helped shape the political landscape of Europe. Behind the scenes, skilled officials kept the castle running each day. Stewards managed finances, scribes recorded agreements, and messengers carried important news, ensuring that the lord's authority reached every corner of the estate. The lady of the castle carried responsibilities just as important as many of the lords. She oversaw servants, managed household supplies, organized food stores, and helped ensure that every part of the castle functioned smoothly. When a lord traveled or joined a military campaign, his wife often assumed responsibility for the estate. Historical letters reveal that many noble women actively managed finances, legal matters, and everyday administration. History records remarkable women who defended castles during times of crisis. While such moments were uncommon, they demonstrate that leadership could fall to noble women when circumstances demanded courage and decisive action. Marriage among noble families often strengthened political alliances as much as personal relationships. Through carefully arranged unions, powerful households secured land, influence, and lasting connections between neighboring regions. Children born into noble households entered a world shaped by responsibility from an early age. Their education prepared them for future roles in leadership, household management, diplomacy, and service to their families. From an early age, noble boys began preparing for adulthood. As pages, they learned manners, horsemanship, religious instruction, and the customs of court before advancing to more demanding responsibilities. Girls also received an education shaped by the future responsibilities. They learned household management, literacy in some families, music, embroidery, and the practical skills needed to oversee a noble estate. Each day followed a familiar rhythm. Sunrise marked the beginning of work. Chapel bells announced times for prayer, and every member of the household knew the duties that would shape the hours ahead. The seasons influenced nearly every aspect of castle life. Spring brought renewal, summer demanded long days of labor, autumn filled the storehouses, and winter encouraged families to gather within the shelter of thick stone walls. Hunting served many purposes beyond providing food. It offered military training, reinforced social status, and demonstrated control over valuable forests that were carefully protected by medieval law. Entertainment brought welcome moments of relaxation to castle life. Traveling musicians, poets, and storytellers carried songs and tales across Europe, connecting distant regions through shared traditions and memorable performances. Quiet evenings often included games such as chess, which challenged both patience and strategy. These moments offered nobles an opportunity to enjoy conversation while sharpening the careful thinking valued in leadership. Tournaments displayed martial skill, courage, and reputation, although remembered today as colorful spectacles. They could be dangerous events where serious injuries sometimes occurred despite careful organization. Religious festivals, successful harvests, weddings, and diplomatic visits often inspired magnificent feasts. These celebrations strengthened friendships, reinforced alliances, and marked important moments in the life of the castle. Even after darkness fell, the castle never truly slept. Guards continued their watch, scribes worked by candlelight, stable hands cared for horses, and bakers prepared for another day that would begin before sunrise. Faith shaped nearly every aspect of medieval life. Daily prayers, religious festivals, fasting seasons, weddings, and funerals reminded the entire household that spiritual belief guided both personal choices and public responsibilities. Many noble families supported nearby monasteries through generous gifts and donations. These relationships reflected sincere religious devotion for some, while also strengthening social ties and reinforcing the family's public reputation. Archaeological discoveries often reveal a more complicated story than medieval chronicles alone. Repaired walls, imported pottery, and changing building plans remind us that castles continually adapted to new challenges over many generations. Although noble families enjoy wealth and influence, their lives remained uncertain. Failed harvests, disease, political rivalry, and unexpected wars could quickly transform comfort into crisis, even within the strongest castle walls. As night settled over the fortress, peace could seem complete, yet beyond the horizon, another army might already be gathering. Soon, every routine inside the castle would give way to a harsher reality, the long and demanding ordeal of siege warfare. Siege warfare and the art of survival. Some battles ended within hours. Others became long sieges that lasted for months. As dawn broke over the countryside, a castle under siege often appeared strangely peaceful, even as thousands of soldiers prepared for a test of patience and endurance. Beyond the castle walls, an army settled into a routine of preparation. Weapons were repaired, siege machines assembled, horses cared for, and supplies organized, as commanders understood that victory might depend more upon time than sudden attack. For those defending the fortress, every watchtower became more important than ever. From these elevated walls, soldiers observed every movement beyond the gates, knowing that even the smallest change could signal the beginning of an attack. Storming a well-defended castle was extraordinarily dangerous. Experienced commanders often preferred careful planning over reckless assault. searching patiently for the fortress's weaknesses before risking the lives of their soldiers. Unlike the dramatic battles often shown in fiction, medieval sieges became contests of endurance. Strong walls favored the defenders, while patience became the attacker's greatest weapon, as both sides waited for opportunity or exhaustion to decide the outcome. Rather than risking a costly assault, many armies simply surrounded the fortress. By blocking every road and watching every gate, they hoped hunger and isolation would succeed where weapons alone could not. Once the gates were closed, the castle became an isolated world. Every person inside understood that supplies must last, discipline must be maintained, and hope depended upon careful planning as much as courage. A reliable source of fresh water could determine whether a castle survived or surrendered. Wells and protected springs were among the most valuable features ever built into a medieval fortress. Food was stored with extraordinary care. Grain, salted meat, dried fish, beans, cheese, and barrels of ale filled underground storerooms, where every supply represented another day the defenders could continue resisting. Every barrel and every sack of grain had to be measured carefully. Castle officials calculated how long their supplies would last, knowing that wise management could become just as important as the strength of the walls themselves. As danger approached, nearby villagers often sought refuge behind the castle walls. The growing population offered safety, but it also placed enormous pressure on food, water, and every available space within the fortress. Castle officials carefully calculated every resource. A fortress housing 100 defenders required far fewer provisions than one sheltering hundreds of frightened villagers alongside its permanent garrison. Historical records describe difficult moments when commanders, facing severe shortages, ordered some civilians to leave the castle. Such decisions reflected the harsh realities of siege warfare rather than a lack of compassion. For families inside the fortress, each passing day brought uncertainty. Parents tried to preserve a sense of normal life for their children, even as food grew scarcer and the sound of the besieging army remained just beyond the walls. Life inside the castle settled into a disciplined routine. Blacksmiths repaired weapons, carpenters strengthened defenses, priests led prayers, and every resident contributed in some way to the forest's determination to endure another day. Every sunrise brought renewed vigilance. Archers watched every movement beyond the walls, while experienced guards remained alert for surprise attacks, hidden movements, or signs that the enemy was preparing a new strategy. Life was demanding for the attackers as well. A large army required food, firewood, shelter, and discipline, while disease and poor weather could weaken the besieging force just as surely as the defenders inside the castle. Many sieges ended without a dramatic assault. Reinforcements, changing alliances, dwindling supplies, or successful negotiations could persuade one side that continuing the struggle was no longer worthwhile. When patience alone was not enough, medieval engineers built powerful siege machines. Among the most impressive was the trebuchet, a remarkable invention capable of hurling enormous stones against distant fortifications. Powered by a great counterweight, the trebuchet could send heavy stones across remarkable distances. Repeated impacts slowly weakened walls, reminding defenders that even the strongest fortress could not rely on stone alone. Castle builders designed every entrance with defense in mind. Heavy gates, iron portcullises, and narrow passageways forced attackers into vulnerable positions where defenders could concentrate their efforts with remarkable efficiency. Arrow loops and machicolations reflected centuries of practical experience. These carefully designed features allow defenders to protect themselves while maintaining clear lines of sight against anyone approaching the walls. Castles were rarely finished forever. As warfare changed, rulers strengthened walls, enlarged towers, and redesigned entrances, allowing each generation to improve upon the work of those who came before. Archaeological discoveries revealed that many castles contain layers of history hidden beneath their visible walls. Careful excavation continues to uncover evidence of rebuilding, repair, and adaptation across several centuries. When a siege finally ended, life slowly returned to the castle. Walls were repaired, supplies restored, and ordinary routines resumed. Yet alongside every real battle, another legacy endured. Stories of hidden passages, forgotten chambers, and mysterious legends that would outlive the wars themselves. Hidden passages, legends, and ghost stories. Long after the last soldiers departed and the banners disappeared from their towers, many castles held onto one final treasure, their mysteries. Even in silence, these ancient walls continue to awaken curiosity and imagination. When evening settles over an old fortress, empty corridors and echoing footsteps can make the castle feel suspended somewhere between history and imagination, inviting every visitor to wonder who once walked these halls. Across Europe, castles have inspired the stories of forgotten chambers, hidden treasures, and mysterious disappearances. These legends grew gradually over generations, blending documented history with the rich traditions of local folklore. Long before printed books became common, stories traveled by word of mouth. Around warm fires, each generation passed old tales to the next, preserving memories that often became richer with every retelling. To understand these legends, we must carefully separate historical evidence from imagination. Both have shaped the way castles are remembered, but each tells a different kind of truth about the medieval world. Among the most enduring castle legends are stories of secret passages. Hidden corridors were said to connect fortresses with distant forests, monasteries, or villages, offering escape when ordinary routes became impossible. Historical evidence confirms that many castles include a small hidden exits known as postern gates. These discreet doorways allowed messengers, scouts, or small groups of defenders to leave the fortress without opening the main gate. Archaeologists have uncovered genuine hidden passages in some castles. Yet the enormous underground tunnel networks described in local legends are far less common than traditional stories often suggest. Constructing long underground tunnels required immense labor and engineering. Most documented passages were relatively short, designed for practical military purposes rather than the vast, hidden networks imagined in later folklore. During a siege, even a modest concealed passage could prove invaluable. It might allow defenders to carry messages, collect fresh water, or launch a carefully planned surprise without exposing the castle's main gate. Another enduring legend tells of hidden treasure. During times of war, noble families sometimes concealed valuable coins, jewelry, or important documents, hoping to recover them when peace eventually returned. Archaeologists occasionally discover hidden collections of medieval coins or valuable objects. Most appear to have been practical savings hidden for protection rather than legendary treasure chambers waiting to be found. Even today, sealed doorways and forgotten chambers inspire curiosity. Many prove to be simple storage rooms or architectural changes made over centuries, yet each discovery reminds us that castles still hold unanswered questions. As abandoned castles fell silent, their empty corridors invited the imagination. Over generations, stories of mysterious figures wandering these halls became woven into the cultural memory of many regions. Across Europe, legends often speak of the White Lady, a mysterious figure said to appear in ancient castles. Historians regard these stories as part of local folklore, reflecting centuries of tradition rather than confirmed historical events. In parts of Germany, another legend tells of the Black Lady, a mysterious figure often linked with noble families, political betrayal, or great personal tragedy. Like many castle legends, these stories evolved gradually through generations of local tradition. Nearly every region of Europe preserves its own castle legends. Scotland tells of phantom pipers, France remembers restless queens, and many ancient fortresses became surrounded by stories that reflected local history and the imagination alike. Historians believe many ghost stories developed long after the medieval period itself. Real events were gradually transformed by oral tradition, literature, and local memory until history and legend became difficult to separate. Folklore experts study these stories not to prove the supernatural, but to understand how communities remembered their past. Legends often reveal cultural values, fears, and identities that written records alone cannot fully explain. Even today, restoration projects occasionally uncover forgotten staircases, hidden chambers, or blocked passageways. Each discovery reminds us that some castles still hold quiet secrets, waiting patiently beneath centuries of stone. Modern technology has transformed castle research. Ground penetrating radar, laser scanning, and detailed digital mapping allow archaeologists to investigate hidden structures while minimizing disturbance to these fragile historic sites. Many newly discovered rooms prove surprisingly ordinary. Instead of hidden treasure, archaeologists often find storage spaces, household supplies, or architectural features that quietly reveal how castles functioned in everyday life. Perhaps The greatest mystery is not hidden beneath the stones at all. It lies in the countless lives that pass through these gates, leaving behind memories too ordinary to appear in chronicles, yet essential to the history of every castle. Standing within these silent halls, it becomes easy to understand why castles continue to inspire wonder. Their architecture invites reflection, encouraging us to imagine the countless conversations and footsteps that time has carried away. Beyond the legends and mysteries stand the castles themselves, remarkable monuments whose true histories remain every bit as fascinating as the stories told about them. In the next chapter, we will journey across Europe to explore some of the greatest medieval castles ever built and the remarkable events they witnessed. As the final embers glow softly in the great hall and the echoes of the hidden passages fade to the quiet night, our journey through the medieval fortress gently comes to a pause. The remaining tales of the castle walls will patiently wait for you until we meet again. Let the absolute safety of these ancient stones and the steady rhythm of the rain bring perfect peace to your mind. If you found comfort tonight, softly subscribe to Slumber Lore. Rest now, sleep well, and good night.